Hey everybody, we're about to get started. If you want to take your seats, I'll be back in 1 second. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you all fighting traffic and all that other stuff to come out and hear about our project and me working together with my friends. Couple of quick announcements, and then I'll hand it over to Jenna. We've got a lunch, a breakfast club. Come learn with us in the boiler room, May 18th, with Boston Stone Restoration. So if anybody's interested in refinishing stone and the process that they do, they're going to bring breakfast, and everyone's welcome. There's I'll start to promote it tomorrow on Instagram, and we'll send out a blast. June 24th, we're having a panel here for Pro New England. June 14th, sorry, thank you, Cheryl. We're having a panel here for Pro New England, and I just decided what it is. It's an interior designers panel, and I'm still working on who's going to be on the panel, but I'm gonna moderate 3 interior designers, which is going to kind of be similar to the one if anyone was at the integrators panel, using, or talking about, my experience and working with interior designers and how awesome it is and how everyone should do it and how they're an integral part of the process and they need to be on the team. So we'll talk about that then. And then for those of you that don't know where the restrooms are, they're straight beyond the bar. Bear right, there's 2 restrooms there. Is that it, Cheryl?
That's it.
All right, thanks. I'm going to hand it over to Jenna. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. One other thing, when I first made this boiler room in Hyde Park, I never thought anyone would come, but everybody always seems to come out. So I really appreciate you all for being a part of what we do. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. It's great to be here. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone in obstructed seating over there.
That's Bryce.
Right, you got the cheek seats. My name is Jenna Talbott. I'm the editor-in-chief of New England Home Magazine. We're happy to be here tonight. Happy to share our May-June issue. Please grab a copy. And I'm very happy to be on this panel with the 3 of you, so thank you. So I was wondering if maybe the loop here would get back to the beginning where we could show our title slide, but that's okay. This is coming up. Yeah, it's coming up. These are images that have been playing. This is of the project that we're talking about tonight, the sunflower, just on a loop, and we might be referring to them as we go. You see something that catches your eye, and I'm going to try and hold on to my note cards. They are ordered. Okay, so we'll just get started.
There it is.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. We did that. Okay. So, to future-proof a product or system is to ensure it is unlikely to become obsolete or fail in the future. A future-proofed home is the ultimate goal of our panelists this evening. Our host, Kevin Cradock, president of Kevin Cradock Builders, architect J.B. Clancy, partner at ART Architects, and interior designer Katie Rosenfeld, principal and creative director of Katie Rosenfeld & Co. Tonight, we'll define the future-proofed home in the context of a single project, the Sunflower, which is undergoing a renovation in Jamaica Plain. And we'll also dig into the key elements that enable a successful collaboration. Our subhead to the title is A Holistic Collaboration on a Victorian Renovation.
Yeah, Boston Victorian.
Yes, Boston Victorian. Okay. All right. So, I feel like the future-proofing home thing, I first heard you use this term, Kevin. So I'd love to start the conversation with you by telling us, define that for us all.
Totally.
Yeah.
So to me, it's a little misleading, right? Because it's not about building science or anything like that. To me, in this context, future-proofing is all about good design, holistic design, where you have a complete team of people who are really hitting it from every angle and every perspective, and just beating it to death to make sure that we don't have to redo it. That's the goal. To get to, so it's sustainable. So we have really good complete design, and there's no regrets at the end of the project. We all feel great about it, and I come back in 10 years to do service or repaint, and we're not like, oh, we don't like this, we don't like that, let's change this, let's change that. So that's really what, to me, what future-proofing is.
For longevity and durability, make it timeless. It sounds like it's the best possible outcome for any residential design endeavor. So with this particular project, JB, it began with you, I believe, and a drawing. Can you tell us about the origin story?
The origin story, okay.
Yes.
Well, of course, every origin story begins with a drawing, right?
Yes. All the best ones, yeah.
This one does, anyway. It wasn't just any drawing. It was a drawing of a building in Boston that I've been working on Beacon Street. And I was doing a lobby renovation for a project for a very nice row house on Beacon Street. And one of the board members, client of the project, whom I got to know, who's actually here right now, along with Heather, his wife, we started talking about buildings, architecture, New England, and we kind of realized we had this love of historic buildings. And Matt in particular was really interested in finding a drawing of the building, of this 232 Beacon Street. And so I said, well, I know some people maybe at the Athenaeum, maybe we'll hunt around, because he was saying I'm having some difficulty finding it. Well, there really aren't many drawings of buildings in Boston unless they're the big famous ones by McKim, Mead, and White. So I said, I could do a drawing for you. And he said, great. And I love to draw, and I love what drawing can do, is it can bring kind of back something that doesn't really exist anymore, or project something that is yet to exist. So this drawing was literally recreating the historic facade of 232 Beacon as if it had been when it was first built, when it still had the stoop. And I found historical photos and drew that and then painted it in a watercolor style, and that was the drawing. And we created this kind of bond over the drawing, and the drawing is hanging in the lobby now. And anyway, a couple of years later, I got a phone call. Hi, this is Matt. Yeah, thank you for the drawing. Do you remember that? We have this house in Jamaica Plain. We're thinking about doing some work. Would you come and take a look? And I did. Met Matt and Heather, and the most beautiful house in Jamaica Plain. And so we started talking about the project, and that's now what we're going to move into.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that house? So it's a stick style, and tell us why that's significant.
So it's a beautiful, what people call a Victorian, but within the Victorian style there are several slices, several subsets. And this particular house is what's called a stick style, which if you see photos of it coming up, there it is. These distinctive vertical elements, which kind of create a seemingly exoskeleton on the exterior, is the style of building that came into America mid-19th century, kind of the precursor to what everyone calls the shingle style. But it was an early kind of Victorian style that was kind of moving away from the Greek Revival buildings of the early 19th century and looking to kind of build in a new kind of expressive language using wood, which is a building material for New England, in this kind of new dynamic way. This house is a phenomenal example of that style, and you can see from these photos how rich it is in detail. So, an opportunity to work on a building like that, it doesn't come around often, so of course I said yes.
And now there aren't many of them in JP, right?
No, there aren't,
right.
No. So, it wasn't a style that really lasted that long. It kind of had a brief window of application, but if you're driving around and you see buildings like that, you can kind of place that in that time frame. So it's very unique.
Mm-hmm. So your client and you bonded over this shared love of historic buildings and historic preservation, and you visited this home and you agreed to take on the project. Tell me how the rest of the team formed.
So, any project, as we all know, takes a lot of people, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of times you get to that team at the very end. But in this particular project, after we started chatting and we started doodling some ideas, I said, okay, we have some thoughts, but we really need to bring in a builder to start to engage in this process, because it's a very particular project with an old building with a lot of kind of unique details, and I think we need to begin to form the team from the beginning And I said right away, there's only one builder in Jamaica Plain who's really qualified to do work on a house of this caliber, and that would be Kevin Cradock. And Matt and Heather had known of Kevin because of his work in the neighborhood, but really from the very early conversations, to me, bringing Kevin on board was going to be an important component of that whole process.
Excellent. So, Kevin, tell me what you encountered when you visited this home for the first time. What did you think? Yes, or did you think,
No, well, JB calls me because he's an amazing architect and I love working with him. I'm like, oh yeah, no matter what. But we actually knew the house already. I had done some work for the previous owners. So he mentioned the address and I said, oh yeah, I know that house. And I know some of the, I would say, less than future-proof moves that were made when they did the renovation. And I knew that it needed a lot of work, and I knew that it wasn't really designed for anybody but the people that used to live there. So I was really excited about the challenge, and also I love kitchens, and it was about a kitchen. Every part and piece of a house is in a kitchen.
So that's where the renovation began, was with this kitchen reimagining. And I think you'll see there's a few different versions of the kitchen that are scrolling through our slideshow here. And then enter Katie. Maybe not quite like that, but tell us, Katie, how you became a part of the project.
I think I remember the story, but typically I'm the last one. Sorry, I'm not good at this.
It's okay. Yep.
Testing. The homeowner contacted me through a platform that I am on called The Expert, which is this sort of digital platform that connects people virtually on all kinds of topics involving interior design. And I kind of feel like, maybe I'm wrong, I feel like she might have been interviewing me, but we did talk about substantive things. We talked about the project, we talked about things germane to the project, but I almost felt like she was kind of casing me out to see if maybe she could want to work with me on this project. And then after, we really got along great, and then I think followed up, and I talked to Kevin and said, she had contacted me and she's terrific, and if you need a designer, I'd love to be, considered, and so on. It kind of just organically formed. I think as in all projects, this one sort of went through the typical sort of ebbs and flows, where first we were doing like decorating the whole house and we were going all the way up to the 3rd floor, and then we pulled back to just, a couple rooms, then we added on more rooms. And, it still kind of sort of is evolving, but the reason that the project was so interesting to me was because the architecture of the house is so spectacular and so historic, and the homeowners definitely had a shared interest in sort of the whole British aesthetic that is near and dear to my heart. And I had just done a kitchen reno, which I think they were curious about, which has a different approach, I guess, than a lot of the kitchens that you typically see. And it made perfect sense to get involved.
Great, and you, the two of you had worked together before too, Kevin and Katie.
Kevin renovated my house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did that
Extensively.
kitchen.
You might, yes.
And when I heard from Katie that she heard from Heather, I was so excited, and Katie was kind of like, let's get this thing going. And so I went to Heather and said, like, let's get this thing going because we're all friends, and if we're friends and we know each other already, it's going to be even better,
So the happy team is formed, and they're all still happy today. Well, the project is still in progress. Can you tell me how much more is left? Where, are we in the middle?
We're about to, we're about to insulate.
Put you on the spot.
So, our PM Jed is in the room, we'd have to ask him. We're about to close up the walls, and we're about to start fabricating this amazing kitchen. So that's where we are
Excellent.
now.
Which, 3 iterations, and now, was it 3 total that?
Yeah, I hope this does work. So, yeah, and on the future-proofing kind of concept, one thing that we like to do early on is throw out a lot of ideas, because you realize once you do commit to an idea and set that boat in motion, it's like an ocean liner. It is hard to redirect it, further down the line if you're not happy with it. So we always think three. Three is a good number, right? We'll throw out 3 initial ideas. One maybe expected, one that pushes the envelope, and then maybe one that tries to turn it on its head and say a complete rethink. And so you'll see some schemes scrolling through here that do that, because it's a lot easier to move things around with lines and sketches than it is in the field. The nice thing about that is then when you throw those 3 ideas out there, it's now a live project, and it sometimes can take on its own life, and that's where the client comes in the interaction with the client, who's an integral part to the team. We're up here, but the client is the key component, the connector of all of us, and because of their interests and vision, I think one of the real drivers in the project. So what I call the 4 scheme always comes out of that conversation with the client, and then that's the scheme that everyone can kind of get behind, because we've all talked about the pluses and minuses, and we all collectively kind of found a kind of space that everyone can agree on. That's also where Kevin came in, because he was on the team in the beginning. Some of the schemes have cost implications, because one was, well, let's move the kitchen to the other side of the house, just to radically rethink that as a concept. But because Kevin was on board, we could build the math associated with those, because that is a key variable in any equation, and then that can be used as a way to evaluate, is that a good idea or not?
Excellent. Well, okay, so I think that segues us really well into digging into what makes this collaboration work. And because we pretty much define that it's collaboration that leads to a successfully future-proofed home, because all that communication is happening before the ocean liner cannot be moved. And I've heard from other designers this rule of 3s too, like 3 options is the right number to share before people's eyes start to glaze over, like, oh, I have too many choices to make. So what I've noted, because so many of us work collaboratively, and no matter what we do, there are some key components that make it successful. And so I'm just going to outline a few things, and you can jump in if you'd like, or clarify any from this list. So communication is key, a clarity of roles, careful preparation, timeline management, respect, and trust, and a great word that you all used when we talked this morning is graciousness. And I can tell just how you're sharing the floor tonight those are tenets that you believe in. Kevin, you talk about a holistic collaboration. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, to me, a holistic collaboration is getting all the major players onto the project. So when as JV mentioned, we came early before we started the project, and that's really what we like to do. We like to work with the architect. It's really it's a long exercise in budgeting and feasibility, and we do a bunch of different for every version. We do a new budget. We talk about the pros and cons. I always bring a sort of a pragmatic approach, just thinking about future-proofing, making sure, like, hey, you're a growing family. How's this going to feel when your kids grow up? Things like that. I'm blanking a little bit. What was it? What was it?
Holistic.
Oh yeah. So holistic. Yeah. So anyway, we're so when we before we start the project in pre-construction, we're looking to see who we need on the team. If there's an exterior scope, which there isn't a major exterior scope here, so we didn't need it, but we would always require to have a landscape architect at the beginning. We always want an interior designer, and obviously we need an architect too on a project that has structure, exterior, things like that. We bring in, I talked about my integrators panel. We always bring in an AV or an integration team at the beginning, because the ideas that come from their work really affect design, and they're also designers. So we're just looking for every single person to put on the team that we need as early as possible, so we can all not only give feedback to the client and to the designer and the architect, but that we could all get to know each other before we actually start swinging hammers. So we're building a relationship of trust throughout the pre-construction process.
And the clients have a role in this too. Talk a little bit about I think someone said in a prep call, being a client is a full-time job. What is Scare us all with that.
JB
Yeah.
said it.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's. That mic keeps on stepping up. I don't know if anyone's ever actually tried to calculate the number of decisions that go into any project, but my guess is it's in the thousands. And someone has to make those decisions, and generally, the last person to sign off on it is the client. So they're going to be involved if they are engaged in all of those decisions, and to think about and to consider and to weigh the options, and then to finally make the decision is work. And so I think it takes focus and time, and it's not a bad job to have, but it takes that. And we always like to say too, an engaged client is the best client. So those who are there doing the work make for the most wonderful projects, and those who are giving that direction. But yeah, I like to respect that. There's an understanding that they, that this is a project, and that they're gonna, they're gonna spend time doing it. But that's why they're an integral part of the team.
Yeah, the client's on the team, and we're all working hard for the project. From my view, like, the clients are a member of the team, and we're really trying to work on this project. The project is really the client, and then that benefits the client if we all do a really good job at that.
So you mentioned that part of the process here is an on-site meeting in person every other week. And I got the three of you up here. Talk about how you manage that with your team, with your project managers. I am assuming, or I don't know. All three of you are at that on-site meeting every week. Katie, please, yeah. Maybe you're shorting it out with your static electricity.
I don't know. Is this one working?
Yeah, that was working.
I just want to add one little thing,
Absolutely.
because I think it's super important, especially for people in the audience who are interior designers like myself. So I think, there's to some degree been this historical stigma that surrounds people that do interior design as opposed to architects and builders, right? We're sort of fluffy people that come in and make things pretty, and that really is kind of what I do, because I have no training, right? I didn't go to design school. I don't have a degree. I can't sketch. I can't even really use a tape measure. But I have a lot of people around me that are super talented at doing all the things that I can't do, and the only thing I have is kind of my brain and some thoughts and some ideas and
Vision, creative vision.
whatever you want to call it. The point I'm trying to make is that it's often awkward, and I remember early in my career having to navigate how to deal with architects, because there's a lot of overlap in what we do. There's some obvious things that are in the architect's, wheelhouse, and some very obvious things that are in the designer's wheelhouse. But there's this whole big blob of stuff that could go either way. And depending on who you hire to work on your project, you either can have it work wonderfully, or you can have people competing to control things and have it be a total cluster, So in this case, it was really congenial, and everyone, sort of really wanted the best for the clients. And I think ultimately what needs to happen, in my opinion, is that the client needs to decide who's in what lane. And as long as they decide that, everyone should just be happy and help each other. That's my view. I don't need to control things. In this case, my team ended up doing the kitchen, but it could have easily gone the other way. I could have ended up doing the living room and the family room furnishing and all the lighting and the finishes, and maybe could have done the kitchen. And that would have been a wonderful result as well. But I guess the point I'm trying to drive home is more when you have three people and there's some overlap, everyone really does need to define their roles, and the definition, in my opinion, needs to come from the client, not from the principals, because really they know what they want and you've got to give it to them. So
That's where that full-time job being a client comes in. Well, one of the things you also described to me that I thought was really fascinating, just kind of getting a little little specific, a little granular here, which I'm happy to hear. Anything else you want to share specific to this project? Oh, we just saw the photo. Was being on site and in person to figure out the scale of the dining table and whether it was oval and the banquette built around, which was mocked up. Do you want to describe that a little bit, Kevin, and how you all three teams worked on that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, well, firstly, back to the meeting, what you said, it's really critical to meet in person and look at the, especially in this whole virtual world. Our world has changed a lot. Everyone wants to meet on Zoom, and we don't get good engagement from clients on Zoom because they're not professionals. A lot of times they don't understand. You need to use your body language to describe things. You need to point at stuff. You need to say, this is that part of the house, that's the other, and you can't do that on Zoom. So
see what those reactions are.
Exactly, yeah. And also you check their vibe, see if they're stressed out about what you're presenting, right? So it's really critical to meet in person. I love being at as many client meetings. I'm crazy, but I love being at as many meetings as I can. I go to all these meetings because I just love the process. I love being a part of it, and I love, like, I'm not the designer, but I love putting my 2 cents in. And respectfully, I don't step on people's toes, but I mean, I do. We have done a whole bunch of stuff, so we have like some knowledge to share. So I love being a part of that, and really the way that I get to be a part of that is being at the meetings. So that's probably why I love the meetings so much. But you know, so we started with this banquette design, which was part of the original sketches from JB. I think the whole project started with a dining room table, didn't it? Yeah, exactly, yeah. Right, so these guys wanted a table, JB sketched the banquette, and it turned into a huge project. Talk about scope creep, right? So, you know, so we had a design, but it's really critical and important for our clients to sit at that table so they know what they're buying, so they know that it works, so they know that it works for the kids, it works for their lifestyle, it works in relation, you know, this little banquette works in relation to the island and the rest of the kitchen. So there's so many moments like that where a mock-up is a really good example because it's really something, a physical thing that we can come and say, look at that. But there's so many like subtle little things like that that really, we just walk through and talk. One time we were talking about these bifold or we had a 4-panel pocket door in the project, and we all sat together, or we all walked together and looked at it, and the feedback from our clients was like, we don't really know if we're going to use these doors. So instead of saying, well, you have to have the doors, they're really awesome because we care about our portfolios and we care about the project, we said, well, if you don't want the doors, you know, and this is, if you don't want the doors, let's get rid of the doors. And when we got rid of the doors, we could raise the height, and we could do all kinds of other cool stuff, make it wider, and it actually ended up better instead of having these expensive doors pocketed in the wall forever.
It affected the budget.
And it affected the budget. And you know, my team says to me, like, hey Kevin, you have a really good way of like encouraging people to dial up the project and spend money. I mean, my motivation isn't to get people to spend money, it's to make the project awesome.
Really?
But that's a byproduct of passion. You know, it costs money what we do. But that was an example where you can make decisions as a group, and the budget can go down. You know, we had 4, I don't know how much they cost, I won't say that here, but we had 4 pocket doors that we were going to make custom. They were like 8 feet tall. Matching details from the house, they were going to cost many thousands of dollars, and we just eliminated. And the hinge, yeah, and all the other crazy stuff, yeah. So we just eliminated that from the project, and it made it a better project, and we were able to, or our wonderful clients were able to use their resources on other things, you know?
Yeah, and I think that, again, comes back to the client, but it also comes back to being on site and looking at things physically as they're going up. So you can do all the planning you want with the drawings, but then when things start to go up in full 3 dimensions, taking the time and the opportunity to go and sit in there, literally, in the bay, or to, you know, to observe what's there, and also then be willing to say, you know what, now that I'm looking at it, we should shift something. And that's what we did with the doors on the, you know, the question from the client, do we really need those? Nah. How are you going to use it? We go through the scenarios. No, actually, you probably won't use them. and then that led to other conversations and other opportunities, as Kevin said. So not being afraid to rethink an idea that seemed like so ironclad in the beginning, I think is an important thing. And that came through this collective conversation, being on site, and just observing what's there and thinking about it that way.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to get this over to you for a second, Katie, because I think it was some of your work that caused this to be dubbed the sunflower, or you're incorporating that sunflower motif into the kitchen. Talk a little bit about that. This is which?
Yeah, so, and to just.
Oh, absolutely, respond.
20
Yes, yes.
So, interestingly, and I think in the interest of me being transparent, the way that my company now runs is very much an efficient model. I only know what I know. I am pretty much useless on a job site unless it's something involving making really sort of holistic, basic decisions. I have people like Jessica and like Lauren and Alana and Megan and Julia in my office who go on site and who have backgrounds in building and architecture and have degrees that are much more competent and can translate the information and the question back to me for overarching decisions. So I don't actually go to a lot of these site meetings because
sounds like you might not be allowed.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, in this case, Jessica's value add is so much more than mine could ever be. So, so that's the way it goes. And also, quite honestly, with a billable hour model, I'm not going to go to these meetings and double bill my client. So I'm going to send the person who's most needed and most capable. And in this case, it was one of the really technical architectural people on my team. And then to speak to the kitchen, I think that was also sort of an evolutionary thing where the client, I think, had seen what I did with my own kitchen, which was not totally conventional, and actually in collaboration with Jessica on my team. So, and we had done something that was, a little bit different, a little bit more European, slightly quirky, and she really was interested, they were interested in doing something similar that translated into their conditions. And so, it sort of fanned out that Jess and I would collaborate again and do this kitchen. And I think the one thing that the client really wanted, if I'm saying it, is a sense of real connection to the design, and for it to be very personal and very sentimental and very special and not sort of just cabinetry, so to speak. And we really wanted to make it something that nobody else did or had. And so on the outside of the home, as you can see in some of the slides, there are these stencils of sunflowers, and cutouts and cabinetry are a big thing now, and we didn't want to do just another sort of dotted cutout. So when Jess and I were thinking about kitchen ideas, we came up with the idea of using the sunflower, and first we were going to carve it, and then we decided not to, but long story short, I think that's how the project got named.
Yeah, that's why we named it the sunflower,
because
yeah.
the kitchen's going to have little sunflowers punched out, I guess, in the cabinetry.
And that's an original exterior detail, we think? That's original?
I think it was done when you renovated.
Yeah, we didn't do that
It was
work,
that.
but I think it was I think that was
Okay.
a new addition.
The flourish.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, Katie, that you mentioned this collaboration amongst your own team, and we talked a little bit about how, as all three of you and your teams come together, if that collaborative nature exists in the way that you run your own firms and run your own operations, there's this built-in culture that you share with the other members on a project team. You want to elaborate on that? Any of you want to talk a little bit about how that then translates to the work, to the site itself, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of people, and even within the office, it takes a couple people generally, at least that's the way our office works also. And because someone needs to hold all the tiny little decisions, and usually it's more efficient if there's one person holding all those, kind of like what Katie was describing. So I think that's something that's important with an internal team, And in the kind of post-COVID world, our office has said, let's all come back into the office because the work is so collaborative. We need to be near each other while we're doing this work because the questions come up frequently and it's just, Zoom is hard to have a spontaneous conversation about a detail. So that kind of gets to the world we're in now, and we realized during COVID how difficult it was to have those conversations over Zoom. So it's just so nice to all be back in the same place. And then within inter-team collaboration, I mean, you had mentioned Jess. I mean, Jess and I had worked together on a project before this and just had a great working relationship. I've known Jess just to be, again, another person who can just zoom in and just, you know, focus on the details, but has amazing design instincts too. So when and I knew she was working for you, and when Kevin told me you guys were on the team, I thought, oh, great. because of that previous relationship and also knowing about your work. But I think that's been fun to kind of, as we're moving now into the minutia, you know, very specific drawings are being done of very specific pieces of furniture, and watching our two offices work back and forth on the review of those and the detailing, coming up with an idea and sending it back and that having to go back. It just, we're not the same office, but it kind of feels like we're in the same space doing it together.
I actually think one of the important things, sorry to sort of jump in, but for me, we use a software and we like the builder and the architect and the client to be on this software, and it eliminates the need to send various emails out. Sometimes you forget to copy somebody or you don't reply all. It's called Basecamp. You've probably all heard of it, but we kind of don't operate without it because it really makes sure that everybody knows what everybody else is doing, thinking, saying, and it eliminates the need to sort of backtrack and find if you copied somebody on an email and all that nonsense. And it really, I think, has made this project and other ones we work on with a team go really smoothly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've been using Basecamp too on our projects, and it's great because you know, it's a group conversation, and kind of talking about the team or my team. We really hit it hard with project management. I'm not a project manager anymore. We've got Jed and Denise, a project coordinator. So we have a two-person team that runs the project. And I show up for the meetings and we talk about all these awesome things, but what we do is leave the aftermath of a lot of hard work for other people to do. Because we're just talking about the design. We're not doing the work. And then a layer below them are all the actual people physically doing the work. So there's any project takes a huge team of people, and they're all integral, and they're all, everyone on our team and our, you know, we've got Team KCB and we've got the KCB Universe, which is all of our trade partners and everybody. They're just all the best. We've been working forever to make these connections. So I can't say enough about how great our team is and how they all interact with everyone else's teams. So we're not, I mean, we're doing the design stuff, but we're not doing the nuts and bolts, you know.
You just sweep in every other week.
Yeah, we're doing broad strokes. Hey, let's do this. Let's add this. Let's do the other thing. Well, we took away 4 pocket doors. Great. Then it's like, yeah, you took out the pocket doors, but you added like umpteen other things for us to deal with. But at the end of the day, that's what it takes, you know, and hard work gets us the result. So we all embrace hard work. We're passionate about it, you know. So.
Katie, do you want to add something?
No.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure I get you in there. Well, so I did tell these folks that they should feel free to dig into a little bit of shop talk here, because I think most of you in this room are design professionals. Any cautionary tales? I mean, I'm always fascinated because problems come up and there's problem solving that needs to happen. Anything you want to share on or advice on how do you weather that with all these people, all these moving parts?
I mean, for me, it's all about who you have working with you and for you and your own team. And surround yourself with people who are more competent than you in certain areas. It's true. I mean, you know, you can't be an expert on everything. You can be so much better if you surround yourself with people who have really good brains. So that's number one. And number two, I feel like take your ego out of the project and don't ever bring it in, because if you want to control things and if you make it about your vision and you, it sort of sours the whole experience.
Definitely. We're in this together. I mean, that's when I mean, we haven't had a huge amount of speed bumps on this project. It's been great, and I think that's a result of the early team. Everybody, even though we all know each other. I mean, I love these guys. They're my friends, and going to work for me and working with people like this just like makes my life great.
He says that to everybody. Is that ever a problem working with your friends?
Yeah. It is. It can be. When they ask you for favors.
Right. Yeah. JB, do you want to add anything to that? Good. Okay. Well, so I don't know if anyone has any questions for our three collaborators up here. Feel free to ask. I can bring the microphone to you.
I think Mike's got a mic.
I got you, Mike.
Oh, you got
We got Mike on the mic.
Dan?
Every single person.
I don't know if I need a microphone.
You don't.
But it was
Yes, you do.
Did you please?
Yes,
Because we're, sorry,
We're
filming.
recording.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, it was great hearing Kevin talk about future-proofing and how he interprets it, like designing so that future uses are anticipated, but also touching on technology and how things change, and how that was tied into timeless design. And that's something that I think about a lot, because I like to work contextually, and I know you do. You're working on this beautiful property, and you want to make sure it all fits. And there's just a lot that goes into that, because things aren't timeless. They always change. And so you have to make decisions about how you fit a context, make it work for the future, and make it feel timeless, or like it works both in its context and for future use. So I don't have a whole lot to offer, but I was curious if it's something that I think about a lot, and there's a lot of questions about that, like when do you know when to stop, or how do you make it fit, or if you wanted to talk about it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Or if that's just too far out.
No, I mean, I agree. Timeless is the ultimate future-proofing. As Kevin said, hopefully we're not in here 10 years from now doing a rethink. And some of the things, but it's also adapted to 21st century living. We're not going to create a kitchen in the basement, say, which is where it may have been for a house like this 150 years ago. So it has to meet the needs of a family in this century. But it doesn't have to look like a spaceship from the 21st century either. And so I think some of the things for us were obviously the programmatic pieces, how the space works and how the family would use it, but then down to the details. If you looked at the bay, and you'll see some images coming up here, would you think that it was done in 2023, or may it have been done in 1875? And I think that's a fun thing to play, because that kind of ambiguity I'm completely comfortable with. Some architects are not. And in fact, some historic preservationists are not. It should be clearly defined by the period it's in and the time it's in. But that's a very contemporary, like now concept. If you look at the history of architecture, that was never the case. So for us, with this really rich detail on this house, it was an opportunity to go and explore some of those elements, and these wonderful turned elements in the front porch. And that was something when we were building this bay, to try and take those elements in, and the rafter tails and such, and create this little bump, because it wasn't a very big piece, that felt like it had always been there. So again, that gets to the timelessness and not being able to identify the time when it
What was
was
your quote, that the historical police will arrest me?
Right. Exactly, right, yeah. If there were police out there for historic preservation, might they come down on you hard for not following the guidelines as set forth by the Department of the Interior. But anyway, again, we live in New England with this incredibly rich building stock. The best in the country, no question. and every project has an opportunity to kind of relate to that history, but still do something today. And I just think that's just always a joy.
Yeah, I would echo that. For me personally, it's so great when, because if you do the work that you love, the type of work that you do, people call you for that type of work. So we don't get a lot of calls for trendy type stuff, modern farmhouse, whatever. People call us for classic work, like really well thought out, architecturally respectful work. And that's the kind of work I like to do. And that's future-proof work, right? Because you drop a modern bay on this house and it's obvious. And then I think at some point someone's going to get tired of that. And they're going to say, like, we want that house back,
Yeah, to spin it quickly into the sustainability thing, everyone hears the term embodied energy, right? The energy inherent in buildings that, was used to create it. And these buildings that have lasted for hundreds of years, I mean, they are incredibly sustainable in that regard because they were built and designed in a way and cared for and loved. I mean, that is a way to build sustainability. And so we can focus on energy efficiency, which we do, and other things like that. But longevity and durability are one of the things that are actually, even almost more impactful.
Totally doing it once, right? Right the first time, instead of doing it again, you have twice as big of a carbon footprint. Honestly.
No one went in and took this house and in the 50s, tore everything out and put in, steel and aluminum windows and
No,
such.
but it was definitely getting to reality, the way it was decorated and some of the finishes were definitely very Jamaica Plainish.
Yeah.
And
Hey.
they were. What does that mean? So I think there's an art in trying to respect the truth and the genre of the house, the period of the house, the architecture of the house, while making it fresh. And you can't be too literal, but you also can't go completely off the reservation. It just, to keep it classic is actually really difficult. You have to combine the past and the future, and it's all just this big puzzle. So, it's not about just looking at what they did during that time and recreating it. It's how you make it fresh.
I can't wait to see it. So I hope I get to come back whenever it's finished and have a tour. Do we have any other questions?
I thought I saw, yeah.
Okay.
I thought I saw some things back there.
I love the client as a full-time job. So when you are meeting with your client, and I think, Jenna, you used the term graciousness, what gracious things do you share with your client to help them to understand their role and what they can do to make this, what you have, work well?
I can answer that to say that I'm honest with them, and I tell them everything that's true, and I don't hold back.
Yep.
Honesty is what it's all about. Transparency and honesty. And if they're making a wrong move or they want to make a wrong move that we disagree with, I think it's up to us to guide them and say, hey, you might not want to do that. It doesn't. I'm sort of an architectural rule follower to a large degree, and this kind of doesn't really follow the rules. It's not my choice. It's their house, but we try to provide as much guidance as possible.
Right, and on the flip side, when they come up with a great idea, realizing that's a great idea. And I'm not gonna say, wait, it's not my idea. That's a great idea. And like we said, the project is paramount. So everyone says listening to their clients, but I think listening is a way of understanding that you may not have all the best ideas all the time. And the group itself, we were talking about this in our call. There's this story out there, and I'm gonna misquote it, so don't eat me up for it. But it's collective wisdom, and there's a social scientist who's a study in this fair in England, and it's a jar of something. I don't know, it's peanuts or beans and there's a survey, how many beans are in this jar? And they kind of look at people give their answer, 20, 1,000,000, 1,000. And then when they look at all the numbers, they're one person doesn't get it right, but the group is within a couple.
When you take the average
you
of all
take
those.
the average of all those guesses, all of a sudden that group finds exactly what this is. And it's a famous story, you can Google it, I'm sure I kind of misquoted it. But it's the idea of like all of us, all four, client included, you know, in that kind of collective sense, will find that point. You know, they always say water reaches its own level, right? You know, it's gonna, we're gonna even out as, if everyone's open and receptive to
Right.
it. You know, and if someone's not, then it can steer off. But ideally, that's how it goes.
Any other questions? See, in the back. Here it comes.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just maybe building off what our friend in the middle was saying earlier. I was curious, like, for you guys, you three, as, you know, experts with, you know, many years of experience, what, like, specific elements, I guess, have stood out to you guys as timeless in the sense that you're talking about? I know you had mentioned timelessness in the sense of like layout and maybe thinking about your kids growing up and all that. There had been a mention of like the turned elements on the porch. And I guess the question would be like, what elements have you guys seen in this project, in your careers, and also in your understanding of the historical context of design? Like what lasts and what do you anticipate lasting?
Good question. I think, I mean, architecture, I think, is cultural. And I think as a society, there are certain things, not that it's like, you know, the lowest common denominator and everyone agrees on one thing and it's not that great. But getting to that, I think it has to be timeless. It has to speak to you and to the larger group. So whether it's a common shared language or whether it's a feeling of light, comfort, durable so it lasts, those are all things that I think give it its timeless quality. So I think that there isn't one thing that you would ever say, there's the timeless style, right? There's like Greek Revival, there's stick style, and there's timeless style. All of them could actually be timeless in their own right. And I think that has a lot to do with the culture that they kind of sit in.
I would also say that, sorry.
I was going to see if Katie you want to go down the line here? You
Oh,
want
you
to
want
say
to
no?
go? Oh, I was just going to say,
Great, so gracious.
subtlety is timeless, you know what I mean? That's, you know, like classic, understated respect for the building. That's what I call timelessness, not over-the-top stuff.
I mean, I think I agree, at least for what we're doing in the house. We're really trying to sort of dig deep into what it was when it was built and what it would be today if it were the best, freshest version of that. So that's not to say that you can't add some surprise elements in there, because I like to do that, and I think that's a wonderful thing to do on a historic project. But I think really staying true to the grain of the hair and, you know, not trying to make it the way it was sort of Jamaica Plain psychiatry office, right?
I think you said like '96, like boomer or older.
Yeah.
Quirky.
Yeah. And you just be careful. It's a beautiful Victorian home, and it, you know, it just wants, that's what it wants to be.
You know I'm Mr. JP, right?
What about personal touches? I would think that, especially in terms of the client and their own art collection, or could also make something feel more, I guess, timeless, or just have that longevity.
I mean, it really helps when your client has good taste, and in
Yes.
this case, they really truly do. It's a nightmare when your client doesn't have good taste. That's actually a huge challenge, and something, you know, we'd all be lying if we said we don't have those projects, because we do. And that's really tough.
Right. So that's an education, I guess, too. That's
Yeah.
part of the process. Okay, we've got a couple more.
Cheryl,
have a question about the dining room table. That started off the project, and are you making it, or is it antique, or tell us about the dining room table?
It's coming from Katie,
It's coming from Stacy.
from Dunes and Dutchess.
Yeah,
right?
it's being made. It's actually kind of I wouldn't say it's timeless. I would say it could be, it could end up being like 40 years from now, this table could end up being iconic. It could be. It's popular for a reason. It's a pedestal. It's got some fluting on it. There's no rocket science about it. It's just clean and simple. It's not modern. It's not traditional. It's kind of in between.
Is it Dunes and Dutchess?
It is.
Oh.
It is.
Okay.
It is. So, and I use their tables all the time because they lend themselves well to so many different environments.
What's the finish?
The walnut, I think the top is like a dark chocolatey walnut, and the bottom is painted walnut too. It's walnut. Alana, put the
Who knows that
order in
answer?
for the walnut.
People that do the hard work know that answer, right?
What is that color scheme of the kitchen?
It really went through several iterations. You mean the decorating or the color of the cabinet?
Yes, cabinet color.
So first you guys wanted a green kitchen, and then we sort of tossed around all sorts of colors, and it actually ended up doing like a very kind of taupey, creamy, beigey kitchen with a lot of wood and a really beautiful eggplant colored butler's pantry or pantry.
And the island's gonna probably be like a bleached walnut. We're still working on samples, but the island's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, it's gonna
amazing,
be
yeah.
like a great big, huge work table.
Intense, yeah. You got a couple behind you, so that's
So this might be a hardball, I apologize if it is, but on a restoration like this, where you're trying to stay as close to period as possible, how do you deal with the energy issues, your energy plant, and the desire to have solar power? Probably the walls that you didn't renovate are very poorly insulated. How did you, in this house, as a team, deal with that issue? Did you embrace it, or did you run from it?
Well, it was relatively recently renovated, so it has a lot of, it has pretty good R value actually in the walls. It has foam in the walls. So some of that stuff we had to take out. If we recognize that something's not done right, some of the application of the insulation was on things that it wasn't supposed to be on. So, stuff like that we'll dig out. But the energy, we didn't improve it a lot, honestly, but it wasn't that bad to begin with compared to most homes that we work in.
But the directive wasn't to do like
It's not a passive house, yeah. It's not a high performance build. It's a historic renovation. So there's
There were a couple of things actually before the project even started. The basement was addressed, and the old rubble walls, and just dealing with that kind of massive thermal bridge that is stone concrete with the foundation. That can add a lot of comfort, and it made the rooms down there better. And then, of course, any wall that's opened up, can be addressed. But as Kevin said, there had been a full gut renovation before. Someone had actually gone and insulated the house. And there are these very beautiful wood storm windows that sit on the outside of the historic single pane windows that are kind of, part of the previous kind of renovation, but probably part of the historic house too. And I think, for us, that's an important piece to keep, because you aren't going to get those windows, new windows, to look like the historic windows. And the storms actually work quite well when you really think about it. And to tear everything out just to put something new in gets back to the kind of embodied energy question. Sometimes the math doesn't quite work out. But this particular house, since it's kind of a very focused area of work, did not have a kind of holistic energy analysis on it. It was really just looking at the areas we were needing to improve and making them the best that we could.
Any other, a couple more, a few more, yeah.
I'd love to hear what each of you think is your favorite element about the house. Just one thing.
It's that island that hasn't been built yet, but I know it's coming.
It's great, yeah. You, Katie?
Really hard.
It's just hard to pick one.
It is super hard to pick one.
Name a few.
The Scots?
The response that Matt picked.
We're gonna keep hearing about this.
I just think when it comes together, it's gonna be work that I'm really excited to show. It's really lovely. It's so sweet and so sophisticated, but so quiet at the same time. It's so pretty.
The old house, I mean, there are two answers. The old house, just the detailing, it's just so exquisite. Everything in it, from the interior to the interior to exterior, is so sensibly done. But the part that I loved experiencing recently was the bay. And when we sat down at the oval table mock-up, and one got a sense of what that space will have. Because there never was a space like that in the house where you could almost be sitting in the garden. And there's a gorgeous Coosa dogwood directly behind this. And, generally you're kind of always 2 feet off or 3 feet off an exterior surface. But when you actually get to sit in this kind of this room within a room out in the garden with these, 9-foot tall window heads above you and the dogwood itself kind of hanging over you, I think that to me is going to be my favorite. It's not built. I mean, it's getting there, but.
One more, 2 more?
We had a couple more, I
One
thought.
over here, one over here, I think, yeah.
Oh, over here? Yeah. No? Okay.
So I guess my question is a little bit more personal. You guys are expert, reference the niche, and Katie shared a little bit of her background, and it got me thinking, like just wondering, what got you guys the niche that you guys are today? How did you know that that's what you want to do for life? And did you think that that's, you become a reference to people like me that came out here to see and learn from you guys and all of that?
I love you. If you want to start?
Yeah, sure. We love what we do, can you tell? And that's where it starts. I mean, I've been loving this since I was a teenager, and my entire life since I was a little kid, I wanted to be where I am now, doing the type of work that I do now. So, I'm fulfilled here, but it's a long, long road, it takes a long time, and each project gets better, and the more of a body of work you have to show people, the more people are going to ask you for stuff.
I mean, I definitely did not think I would have this career. I'm not trained at all. I'm self-taught, and I think, I feel really lucky that this sort of happy accident happened and that this company formed, but I feel like I'm only as good as the sum of my parts. And, some people are cut out to run a business and some people are cut out to work in a business. Not everyone can be the lead actor. You have to have supporting roles, and you have to have, walk-ons, and the whole thing doesn't work if there's not bunches of people doing all kinds of different things that are all really important. And I think you need to find out what your place is. Like, are you a leader? Are you, a second in command? Are you a worker? Are you, everyone has such an important role to play, but it isn't the same role always.
Yeah, for me, I mean, architecture is something I almost can't remember when I wasn't thinking about it, but I'm going to blame my mom for that, who kind of, I think, floated the idea at some point. and would get me kind of drawing and sketching even as a little kid. And so it's just been a kind of slow ramp up to now, because with every step you take, you learn something new, and you realize that was fun, and then again, and I think I've always felt like we've been doing this for a while now, and the learning curve is still like this. So to me, that in anything, hopefully that is what's happening. You're always experiencing something new and kind of exploring new things, and that's what's nice about architecture is it is that kind of dynamic profession in a way.
I jump in real quick and say you should learn something new every single day about your work. I do still. I mean, many things every day. You're constantly learning, and just keep learning. Don't forget that you always need to continue to learn. Thank you, guys. Then we got.
Do you have any suggestions for people who enjoy this type of work with historical sites, restoration? If there's sort of a niche that is able to be sort of explored, whether in interior design or architecture, I guess.
You don't want to work with me?
Sorry.
Advice, yeah. I mean, I think keep looking and looking at the world around you. And we were talking about this before about drawing. If you have to sit down and look at something and draw it, you'll never forget. And so, as an architect, I still do that. And when I have people ask me about what should I do, I'm interested in architecture, which they do. Go get a sketchbook and a pen and just start walking around and looking at things and trying to record them. And that, to me, will develop a knowledge that can't be taught through books. Because in the end, it's your eyes and your way of seeing the world and understanding the world that will kind of relate to the work that you do. And that process of looking and recording and observing is the best way to build that vocabulary in a way. So yeah, I think draw.
Love that.
Yeah. Things in the back.
Greetings, hi everyone. I adore every one of you up there, and I so appreciate all information and feedback. My name's Dane, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. So we operate with a passion for excellence, and I love what you talk about, the fact that you formed this friendship among yourselves, and you use this platform. Katie, what was the name of the platform?
Oh, Basecamp?
Basecamp, yes. So were you all each familiar and using that project management system or communication system when you came on board, or is this something that you introduced, or was everyone familiar? And I'm curious.
You've used it, we use it all the time.
Yeah, we've been
Have you
using
used
it.
before?
We've used it with Kevin.
Yeah, so we use it. One thing about Basecamp, I have a big team, and we use it internally with the team. It's a great, it's like a community bulletin board. It's a great way to give shout outs and spread news, wish someone happy birthday, whatever. It's just a great kind of it's a pretty unstructured communication, which we have a lot of structure in the rest of our world, but I think free-flowing communication is great.
We use Slack internally in our office, and we have channels set up for all sorts of things, whether they're project specific or certain conversations that people are having. But we have a recipes channel, so people can post their favorite recipes. We have our what we call ART Academy, which is our kind of internal drawing and painting classes that we teach to the architects. We have that where people can post artwork that they've made themselves that they're excited about. So we don't use Basecamp except on jobs with Kevin and Katie and others, which is a great program. But we use Slack as a way of having that internal.
So I was just wondering if that's thank you. I was just wondering if that's something that you're using to communicate with clients as well and in places. So all of your communications are within that program.
Ours are, we don't have recipes or classes or anything like that on ours.
Not till the kitchen.
Yeah, no selfies nothing like that, but we do use it to communicate with all of our clients and it's hard to explain because I'm not good at explaining these technical things, but each project has their own dedicated base camp, and each team that works on that project is able to communicate on that base camp team. It's really efficient. If I can use it, anybody can.
One more, as you guys have been a great audience. We have been sitting here for a little over an hour though, so right here?
So with respect to thinking about climate change and the whole push for solar, and you see these beautiful homes with the beautiful, here goes a mess, I look like a duck. With the slate, I guess it's the slate roofs, and just even driving through Newton, and then you see these giant solar panels, and yay, they're using solar, and oh my gosh, look what it's doing to the beauty of the building. And how do you guys reconcile that, or do you see that there's a future where it can be done in a way that's incorporated within the structure of the building so that you can marriage longevity and climate change consideration and safety and beauty all together? I hope that makes sense.
Well, Tesla's been trying to make what they call a solar shingle for a while, and I actually saw it go up on a house in Milton recently. One of the problems was it didn't work really well as a roof. Keeping the water out, so
That's low, right?
Yeah. But people are trying to do that. But not every house is a candidate for on-site solar. And we've done some zero energy houses where we designed the whole building specifically with that roof to be facing in a certain way with a big surface area for photovoltaic panels. But everyone has an option in their own electric bill to purchase renewable energy, electricity. And you can also participate in community solar projects. So not all houses are ideally suited for solar, and I don't think they should be forced to have solar on them. But there are other ways to go and purchase energy that's maybe produced a little more efficiently than your house could. And so if that's something that you realize your house can't do, you have options. And so you can explore that as a possibility.
Well, what do you mean personally? But just sort of thinking in terms
Yeah, no,
of
I'm not saying you
marrying-
personally. I'm saying we get to a house and like.
No one's making
reality.
anything pretty that's
Yeah.
solar
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. So I think the community solar options are the way to go.
It's true, but I have solar panels on my house.
No one said it was pretty.
Yeah. It's not a decorative element. I care about the environment, and I have a gambrel that kind of lends itself a little bit more to solar, but you can see the solar panels on my house, and I'm okay with that. It's really a personal choice. We've done a lot of amazing projects on Victorian homes, and people are like, I want solar panels, and I'm not going to say don't use solar panels. It's important, so we do put them on.
Speaking of things pretty and fun, where do you find some of the antiques, more detailed stuff that you use either in this house or in other projects that you've done? Like you're talking about the sunflowers with the carving, the wood, and someone mentioned earlier, like gilt from the sunflowers on the outside of the house. Just incorporating detail and stuff, like where you find stuff, and like again with the time periods and trying to keep it to around the Gilded Age, not like it has to be like 1875 or else.
So you're asking where we shop, like where we source stuff?
Kind of, or
Or where they
the
find
house-
inspiration?
Or where we find
inspiration, I guess shopping as well. Maybe like the house comes like antiques or stuff that you've found, or again, past projects or future projects. Not future projects, you wouldn't know anything about that. Sort of just finding, like metalwork, woodwork, incorporating those details and finding the inspiration for those details, and I guess incorporating them into the work.
I think it's everybody has like a Rolodex, so to speak, of there are people that do certain interesting things. And so the cool thing about getting to work with architects and builders is that you meet these subcontractors that have all these specialties that you might not have known about, and then you think, oh, well, I could call so-and-so to do such and such. Wouldn't it be cool if we used, you know, so-and-so to do this on this other project? It's sort of just this endless stream of connections that you make when you know other people in the industry, and, you know, you look around and you see stuff, and, you know, you peruse social media and you watch TV. It's like all the stimulation comes in, and at least for me, I kind of just have to like digest it, and I have to put it somewhere. So, and I think when you work in the industry, you have the desire to create something, and you have all these people that you know and that you work with that are sort of like different cogs in the wheel that can help you make it even better. So, does that answer? I don't know if that answers. And then shopping, we can talk about it. Yeah.
New England's blessed with an incredible craft tradition. I mean, you name it, there are still people here making things, you know, hand-run plaster, stained glass, wrought iron work, and looking to them for what their knowledge, and then learning from them, and then incorporating that into the things you're interested in is a real pleasure. But we're so lucky here, because you name it, there is someone who is an expert in doing that and has been doing it for a long time. So all you have to do is the Rolodex, just flip through, or maybe a Google search. You'd be amazed how many stained glass makers are still in New England, and things like that.
And anything made of wood is made right here in this
Well, thank you, everybody. You've been a great audience. Great, thank you.
Thank you all.